Hey guys, it's Dan, and welcome to Danotaz Media. And on today's video, I will be reviewing Fate Zero. For those who have never heard of Fate Zero is a 2011 Japanese anime series based off of the 2003 light novel of the same name. The story is a prequel to the visual novel Fate Stay Night and is one of the various installments in the extremely popular and ever-expanding Fate franchise. The series tells the story of the Fourth Holy Grail War, a secret magical tournament held in Fuyuki City, Japan, where 7 mages, known as Masters, summon servants, which are the reincarnation of legendary souls and heroes from all across time, all in order to fight in a deadly battle royale, where the winner gains the magical wish-granting cup, the Holy Grail, in hopes of obtaining their deepest desire. Before I get into my overall thoughts on the series, I would like to issue this spoiler warning. For those who have not seen Fate Zero, but would like to see it, and do not want to know what happens in the show before you watch it, please click off now and return once you've watched it. So, with that out of the way, let's continue with this review. My overall opinion on Fate Zero, I absolutely loved it. It was amazing. And if I'm being honest, one of the best anime I've ever seen. I don't really think I've ever seen anything like it. It's so unique and very different from other anime. Like all series, Fate Zero has its pros and cons, but luckily for Fate Zero, there are a lot more good things about the show than there are bad. However, this wouldn't be a fair review if I didn't address any of Fate Zero's flaws. So later in this video, I will touch upon some of the aspects I wasn't a huge fan of. But for now, let's focus on all the good stuff. Personally, I think the best thing about Fate Zero was the animation. The animation was absolutely stunning. It looked amazing on screen, and everything from the background designs to the character designs looks like artwork that you could frame in a museum. But the points where the animation in Fate Zero is at its best is during the action scenes. The action scenes are next level cinematic. Fate Zero was animated by Ufotable, which is the same animation studio for Demon Slayer. However, the action scenes in Fate Zero are far superior to Demon Slayer in every way possible, from the choreography to how it looks in motion and the visual effects. Everything about the fight scenes in Fate Zero is much better. Hell, it looked so good on screen that the entire time I was watching it on Netflix, I thought I had been watching it in 4K, when in reality, I had only been watching it in regular HD. That's how good Fate Zero's animation looks on screen. The next best thing about Fate Zero is its story. The story is incredibly engaging. By the second episode, you're already hooked for the rest of the series, and it only gets better from there. Something I did forget to mention earlier in the video was that the 7 servants summoned by the 7 masters are actually separated by class. There are the 3 knight classes, Saber, Archer, and Lancer, and then there are the 4 cavalry classes, Rider, Caster, Assassin, and Berserker. Each of these servants have different powers, and part of the interesting aspect of Fate Zero is seeing how each servant's powers play into the plot line of the story, and the exact same thing applies for their masters. There are also a bunch of very well executed twists throughout the show, many of which both the characters within the show and the audience do not see coming. And the way the story is structured to make the 2 seasons feel like one giant season makes this series particularly suitable for binge watching. And of course, we wouldn't have a story without characters, and the characters in Fate Zero are all amazing. Fate Zero has an ensemble cast, so it has a ton of main characters, all of which are completely different from each other. But what differentiates Fate Zero from other anime is that there isn't a clear lead, which may sound messy at first, but actually works really well throughout the story. Another unique aspect about Fate Zero is that it actually features a very diverse set of characters. In most anime, all the characters tend to be Japanese, but That's not the case with Fate Zero. While there are Japanese characters, they only make up a quarter of the actual cast, with almost every other character being of a different nationality. And I also liked that all of the characters were adults, which is extremely different from most popular anime nowadays, which often feature teenagers as the main characters. But that's not the case for Fate Zero, as its main cast is comprised completely of adult characters, with the exception of Waver Velvet, who is a teenager. Okay, I already know that many anime fans are going to be absolutely pissed at me for saying this, but in my opinion, the best way to experience Fate Zero is through its English dub. Don't get me wrong, the original Japanese actors in the sub are good, but in my opinion, the English dub actors were much better. You could feel a lot more emotion in their voice than you could the Japanese actors, which in my opinion helps you connect to the characters more, and makes the dub the superior experience of the anime. Now, as I mentioned before, I pretty much loved the entire cast of characters and their voice actors. But because this cast is so big, I won't be able to address every single performance. So instead, I am just going to talk about who I thought were the standouts. And in my opinion, the standouts were Kari Walgren as Saber, Matthew Mercer as Kiritsugu Emiya, Bridget Hoffman as Iris Veal von Einsberg, Grant George as Lancer, and Mela Lee as Rin Tosaka. First, let's talk about Saber. Saber is actually a gender-bent character. Now, I'm in favor of gender-bent or race-swapped characters as long as they meet one of the two criteria. Either the change in the character adds something to the overall story, or the performance of the actor playing them justifies the change of the character. In the case of Saber in Fate Zero, it's actually both. The decision to gender bend King Arthur into Artoria Pendragon was a brilliant twist, and boy was it effective. I was just as shocked as Kiritsugu and Iris Veal when Saber first materialized. And Kari Walgren, who I've been a fan of since she voiced Emma Frost in Wolverine and the X-Men, does a phenomenal job voicing Saber. She really captures everything you'd expect King Arthur to be. She's brave, noble, kind, and best of all, she's an absolute badass. And I also really enjoyed her dynamics with the other characters, especially the standouts like Iris Veal, Kiritsugu, and Lancer. Moving on to Kiritsugu Emiya, voiced by Matthew Mercer as an adult and Marin Miller as a child. He is probably one of the most compelling characters of Fate Zero. It was really interesting to learn about his origins, establishing why he was so different from other mages in battle, preferring to use guns and knives rather than spells or curses. I also found his character's personal code to be quite fascinating in the sense that he kills not because he enjoys it, but because the deaths of the people he kills will end up saving the lives of countless innocents. And I really do believe that this is Matthew Mercer's best performance yet. He was incredible. He really was able to make me sympathize with this character that would otherwise be unlikable to most people. I would definitely say that the standout moment in Matthew Mercer's performance was probably in Season 2, Episode 6, the scene right after Kiritsugu kills his adopted mother after he blows up her jet in order to prevent a zombie apocalypse. The sheer agony and guilt and pain you hear in Mercer's voice makes you sympathize with Kiritsugu in a way that most actors probably wouldn't be able to. Then there's Iris Veal von Einsberg, voiced by Bridget Hoffman. Iris Veal is an intriguing character because unlike the other mages, Iris Veal actually isn't human. She's a homunculus, an artificial Homo sapien who was created just for the Holy Grail War by the von Einsbergs. Throughout the series, Bridget Hoffman does an amazing job portraying Iris Veal as a woman with a childlike sense of wonder. But this is also part of what makes Iris Veal one of the most tragic characters of Fate Zero. Throughout the series, you get the feeling that she's only now just begun to live her best life during the Holy Grail War, when she's finally getting to see the world. But as we later learn, because Iris Veal is a homunculus, she has a short lifespan, so she's been slowly dying ever since the war began. This all builds up to the scene where I believe Hoffman gives probably one of the greatest performances of the entire show. When Iris Veal is on her deathbed, she's telling Kiritsugu how she wishes she had more time in the world to experience all of its wonders. She also tells him how much she loves Japan and makes him promise to bring Elias Veal, their daughter, to the amazing country and give her the chance to experience all of the things that she wouldn't be able to. Hoffman delivers her lines with such emotional heartbreak. She instantly cements herself as one of the best actors on the show. Next, we have Rin Tosaka, voiced by Mela Lee. Mela Lee was actually one of the very few cast members from the original Fate Stay Night dub who returned to reprise their role in Fate Zero. And while the original Fate Stay Night and its dub were not very good, it had nothing to do with Mela Lee. Now, despite not being one of the main characters, Rin Tosaka still gets an entire episode dedicated to herself, in which Mela Lee gets to prove why she was one of the few voice actors asked to reprise their role. She portrays Rin as an intelligent and likable little girl, and through her performance, she's able to help the audience relate to Rin more as a character, being a child who looks up to her father and just wants to make him proud. Also, major shout out to the writer of Fate Zero for coming up with the idea to have 7-year-old Rin take on a serial killer in her own arc in order to save her best friend. And with the addition of animation and Mela Lee's line delivery, makes the scene where Rin overwhelms Ryunosuke with her magic one of the coolest moments of the show. Finally, we have Lancer, Diarmut Udubna, voiced by Grant George, whose character, interestingly enough, is trying to seek redemption, or at least some form of it, in his new life, to make up for the disloyal actions he had taken in the past when he had an affair with the King of Ireland's betrothed, which in turn resulted in his own execution. Because of this, Diarmut dedicates his new life as a servant to loyally serving his master, which inadvertently ends up making his new life just as miserable as when he was alive. Voice actor Grant George does an amazing job portraying Lancer as both a victim of circumstance and his own actions, while also adding a unique sense of nuance to his voice whenever Lancer expresses a special form of emotion, whether it be the joy he feels from dueling with Saber, or the discontentment he feels whenever he's around his master. Okay, as I mentioned before, Fate Zero, despite being an overwhelmingly good series, has its flaws. For example, the first episode of the series is actually pretty boring. Likely, out of an assumption that the audience would have trouble grasping the concept of Fate Zero, the series essentially just took the general summary of the show and stretched it into an entire episode, which led episode 1 to be quite boring and uneventful due to an excessive use of character monologues and plot setup. Episode 1 was honestly so bland that I likely would have dropped the entire series had it not been for the great twist-ending cliffhanger at the end of the episode. But aside from a bad first episode and a few loose plot threads that I felt the show never properly addressed, the rest of the show is extremely solid and incredibly well executed. So that concludes my review for Fate Zero. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this from me, make sure you leave a like on this video, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with others in order to help support my channel. Make sure to click the little bell icon when you subscribe to make sure you get notified every time I upload a new video. So without further ado, I will see you in the next video.